Welcome back, and now we are crossing over to our sister station Spice FM for an earlier conversation with Wajir Governor, who is also Vice Chair of Council of Governors, that is Ahmed Abdullahi, where they were having a discussion on counties' response to issues flagged by the Controller of Budget. Listen in.
We are live everywhere across the globe, and if you don't catch our conversation live, you can still catch up with the conversations by following our streams later. On this day, the country begins the first of 3 days of national mourning following the death of the Chief of Defense Forces, General Francis Omondi Ogola, and 9 other military officers who passed on yesterday. This, of course, was announced by President William Ruto last evening. Our guest this morning is the Governor of Wajir County, who's also the Vice Chairman of the Council of Governors, FCPA, Ahmed Abdullahi. Governor, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you today?
I'm very good.
Karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation. Of course, we begin the conversation on this sad note following the death of the general. And we'll be coming to you just to get your message of condolence, I'm sure, to the people of Kenya, to the country. You tell us if you interacted with the general at all or any of the other military officers who passed on yesterday.
Thank you. It's really a very sad day for us. What happened yesterday was a shock. So I want to pass my condolences to the families and friends of the general and the gallant soldiers who passed on. I want to pass my condolences on behalf of the Council of Governors, on behalf of the people of Wajir, and on my own behalf to the KDF fraternity, to the President as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. As the people of Wajir, we have a very special relationship with KDF. One of the biggest bases for both the Kenya Army and for Kenya Air Force is in Wajir, actually. And 2 days ago, we were with the general at the closing ceremony of the wage bill conference, and we chatted on the sides, and he actually told me he plans to come to Wajir. They've been very helpful to us during the flood situation that we've had, where they were actually airlifting food to very peripheral places. And I remember even one of their planes crashed at one of our centers in the process. So I've interacted with the general many times before, and it was really a shocker. You know, we were in this meeting discussing how to get back the doctors back to work when we got the message. And you know, that's how life is. You know, it's sad, but I pray that his family has the patience, of the strength of patience to bear this loss. I pray that the KDF and the fraternity of the disciplined forces have the patience, the strength of patience to bear this loss, and may they all rest in peace.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that message. And also it's the same similar message that we pass from the three of us and the entire crew at Spice FM. This very tragic occasion where, yes, we are looking at gallant soldiers, people who have dedicated their life in service of the country. And so when we see this, we all mourn. Governor Siti Muga is a man who loves proverbs. Every week he goes into one country in Africa. He researches, as he always does in many other things. He now this time researches for proverbs and then brings us proverbs from that country. This week, the man has been in West Africa in a country called Cape Verde, which is an archipelago of islands, right?
Yes.
10
islands to be
10 islands.
To be precise, yes. But of interest, there is a collection of similar islands that form what we call an archipelago. And it's actually a very interesting name. It's a Macaronesian ecoregion. It's an interesting term, but it covers certain other areas around the globe that have similar features. One of them is Madeira, the Azores, the Canary Islands, and the Savage Isles. Interesting features.
They're called Macaronesian
ecoregion. It's an ecoregion, yes. Meaning they are very specific and special features. Okay, yes. You consider it as an entity, but it's very, very many islands. 2 or 3 big ones, but others more or less dotted.
Right.
And you'll find that the capital city is probably in the biggest of those particular islands.
Right.
Now the proverb if the baboon could see his behind, he'd laugh also.
If the baboon could see its behind, he'd laugh also.
Yes.
Governor, what do you think this proverb is telling us?
We have similar proverbs actually in many African languages, and I think it's got to do with something similar to removing the speck in the other's eye.
When you have a log in
You're leaving the dog in your own.
I don't know. So, usually we don't introspect, we look at the faults in others, but yes, and it's others who see what's wrong with us, not ourselves, basically, yeah. So I don't know, that's how I understand it, yeah.
If we introspect, we'd also notice a number of things with us.
Yeah.
Okay. Time for that introspection. Now, of course, we just marked 10 years of devolution last year. And we are now having this conversation about devolution and what devolution has done to the country, how far we are going. We have those independent offices that were established to make sure that especially our public finance is managed well. You're an FCPA. You are a fellow of the accountants. The controller of budget has been raising a couple of issues. The Auditor General has also been raising a couple of issues, of course, touching on counties and, how money is being spent in counties. Some of those have been flagging issues that the Controller of Budget, for example, says, look, something as basic as employment, something as basic as just balancing between development and recurrent expenditure. Many counties are flouting this.
Yeah.
PFM Act and the laws say, do not spend more than 70% of your budget on recurrent expenditure. Many counties have gone beyond the 70%. Why is it so, Governor?
Very good. Thank you very much. We have seen the issues raised by the control of budget. And we're just out of the wage bill conference. And on day one, I was among the speakers representing the Council of Governors, and I touched on a number of these things. And the challenge that we have, I think, is not so much bringing out the flouting of those ratios, because indeed they're ratios. When you say 70% should not be spent on more than 7% should not be spent on recurrent, it's 7% of what? 7% of the revenues. When you say not more than 35% should be spent on wage bill, 35% of what? Wage bill as a percentage of revenue.
Of revenues.
And the issue that I brought out, which I bring out here, is every ratio has a numerator and a denominator. And we only seem to talk of the ratio with respect to the numerator, but no one wants to discuss the denominator, which is revenues. And that's where we start. So for the ratios, I think our expenditure problem, be it on recurrent expenditure in total or on wage bill, is more of a revenue issue than an expenditure issue. And I'll demonstrate that to you. It's more of a revenue problem, not so much an expenditure problem. That's not to say that there are not things that are going wrong on the expenditure side. But I will come to that later. Why is it a revenue issue? Our constitution is very clear. The framers of this constitution actually left nothing to chance. They protected devolution. They were very clear as to the separation of roles between the national government and the county government. And when you look at the fourth schedule of the Constitution, that lists out about 14 functions precisely that are devolved, they were very clear what it is that they intended the counties to do. And they also left it, they were not ambiguous in the way revenues ought to be shared. They said resources must follow
Functions.
functions.
Yeah.
That's key. Resources must follow functions. And Article 6.2 of the Constitution was also very clear that governments are distinct. They're separate from each other. They're interdependent, which means county governments are separate and distinct from the national government. But people also forget that the county governments are also distinct and separate from each other as governments. So the formula of how we share these revenues, first vertically between the national and the county governments, and then horizontally between the county governments is very clear, while respecting that resources follow
Functions.
And I think this is the gist of the problem. We're not adhering to that. We're not adhering to that.
Why, Governor? Why is there no adherence to what has already been laid down and what would have assumed to be rule of law?
Because the key arbiter in this division of revenue is the CRA. The CRA is an independent constitutional commission whose role really is basically to oversee vertical share of revenue between national counties and horizontal share of revenue between counties. But CRA's recommendations are not binding. Yet decisions on pay by SRC are binding. And it's part of the challenge. Two, after CRA makes the recommendation, it then becomes a political process. A political process. Because it goes to the Houses of Parliament, it goes to the Senate, and it goes to the National Assembly. And the politics of things gets in the way. And governors have no leverage at that level. I've also seen disagreements even between the Senate and the National Assembly. We've had situations where National Assembly finalizes the division of revenue without input from
the
Senate, or without solving the disagreements that it has with Senate. We have had situations where Senate is mobilized politically to agree with the National Assembly to the detriment of the counties, in total disregard to the position of the counties and in total disregard to the position of the to the Commission of Revenue Allocation. So the revenue has not been growing at the same pace with the growth of these expenditures.
Have the functions increased?
The challenge of revenue is twofold. One, there are functions that are yet to be unbundled, finalized, and transferred. We're still going on with the process of unbundling of functions 10 years down the road, 12 years down the road. Two, even for the functions that have been unbundled, devolved, transferred to the counties, we still have a lot of resources relating to those functions at the national level. The framers of our constitution were very clear that for devolved functions, what the national government retains is policy and standards, but the implementation belongs to the counties. That has not been complied with faithfully. And I think an impression has been created. And I think it also emanates from the way we do our politics. It's almost becoming existential for national government to claw back on devolution. Why do I say this? Because they feel that if they don't do that, they will not be at the grassroots where the rubber meets the road. The counties and the governors will be more relevant. So they then end up doing exactly the same things we are
So there's a
doing.
duplication of function.
There's a duplication of function.
Is that now what I'm understanding you today? Because we just tackling the issue of public wage bill
Yes.
at county level. Is it your position here that the number of employees and your wage bill is justified? It's only that the money that comes to counties is not enough.
Precisely. What I'm saying is,
so you're saying you have not overemployed at county level.
if
You're not overspending on salaries at county level. All you need is more money to come to the counties.
I'll discuss our problems of the wage bill that's controllable at the county level. I'll come to that. But what I'm saying is the challenge of the ratio is more of a revenue problem than an expenditure problem. Why do I say that? Recently, the IGRTC, I think it's called Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee. This is a commission of sorts. It's not really a constitutional commission yet, but it's a technical committee, the successor of the Transition Authority, that was to do the residual work of the Transition Authority in ensuring that this unbundling and split of functions and resources is consummated, is completed. Came up with a figure of 272 billion shillings relating to functions that have either been devolved and transferred, whose monies are still being kept at the national level, or functions that ought to have been devolved. It was a costing of those functions, functions belonging to counties that are being carried out by national government. The current suggested revenue to counties, share of revenue to counties for fiscal year 2024-25 is 391 billion, which is only 5.7 billion more than last year's, which is 5.7 billion more than the previous
the current financial
year.
Yeah.
Now, if you add 272 to that number, I'm a guy of numbers, you will get 663 billion
that ought to be going to devolution.
Going to counties.
Okay.
Right? And that is the crux of the matter.
But then,
that's
Governor,
the conversation.
Let me hold you there.
Yeah.
IGRTC says this is costing of functions that should be getting performed by counties, but are not being performed by counties. So why have you hired people to perform those functions if the functions are still they have not been unbundled and transferred to the counties?
In my view, and I remember saying that, they do not only relate to functions that have completely not been transferred. They also relate to functions that have been transferred. They relate to concurrent functions, because the functions are of three types. The functions that are purely national government functions, things to do with defense, security, foreign affairs, and the like. Then there are functions that are concurrent, and there are functions that are ought to be
purely
functions
county.
Yes. So if this unbundling process were to be completed, if all the resources relating to functions being performed by counties or to be performed by counties were also transferred to the counties, we will not be talking about inability of any of the counties to meet these two significant ratios. One on total recurrent expenditure as a percentage of revenue, and the other as wage bill to revenue. So that's one side of the story. The other side is no one is looking at the growth in service delivery of functions that have been devolved and transferred with respect to or as against the growth in the revenue. And I want to give you numbers here, which numbers we also brought out at the wage conference. Very basic. We had 870, actually precisely 874 doctors in county hospitals at the onset of devolution in 2013. Now we have over 4,600. Actually, I don't have the exact figure, but I can get that. We have close to 5,000 doctors in
county facilities.
We had 6,000 thereabout nurses. Today we have 31,000 nurses in county facilities. We had 1,700 agricultural extension officers. Now we have over 8,000 agricultural extension officers. We had nearly zero ECD teachers, because the few there were either being paid by parents or a few local authorities, a few of the urban local authorities. Today, we have 42,000 ECD teachers on the payroll of counties. What was devolution supposed to do? Devolution was supposed to take services closer to the people. Right? I'll give you an example. The county of Wajir, before devolution, was the district of Wajir. Which district had the same boundaries from the eve of independence to date, right? It became a county with its boundaries as delineated on the eve of
independence.
It had